It is your guy Sports Live with a live stream today, June 23rd, 2025. Today we're going to discuss Major League Baseball games that will be taking place between June 24th through 26th of 2025. We will go over who is playing, who the starting pitcher is, and then after we go through each day, I will then give you my predictions on who I think will win the games. So, can y'all hear me out there in YouTube land? I thank you very much for tuning in today for this live stream on Sports Live Media. And yes, I am broadcasting live. Anyway, let's get into this, shall we? For the Major League Baseball games that will take place on June 24th, you have Texas versus Baltimore, which will take place at 5:35 p.m. Central Time. It will be Undecided versus Charlie Morton. The Athletics will play Detroit 5:40 p.m. and the starting pitchers will be Luis Severino versus Tariq Skubai. You have Toronto versus Cleveland, which will be Undecided versus Logan Allen, and that game will be at 5:40 p.m. You have Atlanta versus the New York Mets, which will be at 6:10 p.m., which will be Undecided versus Clay Holmes. You have the New York Yankees versus Cincinnati. That will start at 6:10 p.m. You have Carlos Rodon versus Chase Burns. You have Arizona versus the Chicago White Sox, which will be Ryan Nelson versus Sean Burke. And that game is scheduled to be at 6:40 p.m. Can y'all hear me out there in YouTube land? Let's see. You have Pittsburgh versus Milwaukee. That'll be 6:40 p.m., which will have the starting pitchers Andrew Haney versus Jacob Misovowski, something like that. You have Seattle versus Minnesota, which will be at 6:40 p.m. You'll have Luis Castillo versus Chris Paddock. You have Tampa Bay versus Kansas City, which will take place at 6:40 p.m., which will be Taj Bradley versus Chris Bubik. Let's see. You have the Chicago Cubs versus St. Louis, which will be 6:45 p.m., and that'll be Jameson Taillon versus Eric Fed. You have Philadelphia versus Houston, which will be Ranger Suarez versus Framber Valdez. Hello to Mr. Artuk. Thank you both for joining me on the stream today. Again, you have Philadelphia versus Houston, which is Ranger Suarez versus Framber Valdez at 7:10 p.m. You'll have the Los Angeles Dodgers will play Colorado. That game will be at 7:40 p.m. and that'll be Undecided versus German Marquez. You have Boston versus the Los Angeles Angels, which will be Garrett Crochet versus Tyler Anderson. That game will start at 8:38 p.m. You'll have Washington versus San Diego, which will start at 8:40 p.m. Central. Trevor Williams versus Ryan Burgert. And you'll have Miami versus San Francisco, 8:45 p.m. with Cal Quantrill versus Justin Verlander. So, anyway, now I'll make my picks for June 24th. In the game Texas versus Baltimore, I choose Baltimore to beat Texas. In the game the Athletics versus Detroit, I have Detroit winning. I have Cleveland to defeat Toronto. I have the New York Mets defeating Atlanta. I have Cincinnati defeating the New York Yankees. I have the Chicago White Sox defeating Arizona. I have Milwaukee defeating Pittsburgh. I have Minnesota defeating Seattle. I have Kansas City defeating Tampa Bay. I have St. Louis defeating the Chicago Cubs. I have Houston defeating Philadelphia. I have the Los Angeles Dodgers defeating Colorado. I have the Los Angeles Angels defeating Boston. I have San Diego defeating Washington. And I have San Francisco defeating Miami. Alright, moving on to the games for June 25th of 2025. June 25th, you'll have Arizona versus Chicago White Sox, 1:10 p.m. All times listed that I tell you in terms of when the game will start will be in Central Time. It'll be Zach Gallier versus Undecided. You have Pittsburgh versus Milwaukee, 1:10 p.m. with Paul Skinnis versus Jacob Misarowski. Boston versus the Los Angeles Angels, 3:07 p.m., which will be Richard Fitz versus Yusei Kikuchi. Washington versus San Diego, that'll be 3:10 p.m. Mackenzie Gore versus Nick Pivetta. You have Texas versus Baltimore, which will be Jacob DeGrom versus Tomoyuki Sugano. And that game is at 5:35 p.m. You have the Athletics versus Detroit, 5:40 p.m., which will have Jacob Lopez versus Undecided. You have Toronto versus Cleveland, which will be 5:40 p.m. Kevin Gausman versus Gavin Williams. Atlanta versus the New York Mets game will start at 6:10 p.m. and that'll be Undecided versus Clay Holmes. You have the New York Yankees versus Cincinnati at 6:10 p.m., which will be Max Fried versus Brady Singer. Seattle versus Minnesota, 6:40 p.m. George Kirby versus Joe Ryan. Tampa Bay versus Kansas City, 6:40 p.m. Drew Rasmussen versus Michael Wacha. You have Chicago Cubs versus St. Louis, 6:45 p.m. Matthew Boyd versus Andre Palante. You have Philadelphia versus Houston, 7:10 p.m., which will be Christopher Sanchez versus Colton Gordon. You have the Los Angeles Dodgers versus Colorado at 7:40 p.m., which will be Yoshinobu Yamamoto versus Chase Dolander. You'll have Miami versus San Francisco, which will be Edward Cabrera versus Logan Webb, and that game will be at 8:45 p.m. All right, so my picks for the games for June 25th. I have Arizona defeating the Chicago White Sox. I have Pittsburgh defeating Milwaukee. I have Boston defeating Los Angeles Angels. I have Washington defeats San Diego. I have Texas defeating Baltimore. The Athletics will defeat Detroit. Toronto will defeat Cleveland. Atlanta defeats the New York Mets. The New York Yankees defeat Cincinnati. Seattle will defeat Minnesota. Tampa Bay will defeat Kansas City. Chicago Cubs will defeat St. Louis. Philadelphia will defeat Houston. The Los Angeles Dodgers will defeat Colorado. Miami will defeat San Francisco. So those are my picks for June 25th. Now, let's look at the games on who is playing on June 26th. It'll be the Athletics versus Detroit, which will start at 12:10 p.m. Jeffrey Springs versus Jack Flattery. Toronto versus Cleveland, 12:10 p.m., which will be Undecided versus Tanner Bibby. Seattle versus Minnesota, 12:10 p.m. Emerson Hancock versus Simeon Woods Richardson. Philadelphia versus Houston, 1:10 p.m. Zach Wheeler versus Hunter Brown. Tampa Bay versus Kansas City, 1:10 p.m. Shane Baz versus Michael Lorenzen. You have the Chicago Cubs versus St. Louis, which will be Cade Horton versus Sonny Gray, and that game will be at 1:15 p.m. You'll have the Los Angeles Dodgers versus Colorado at 2:10 p.m., which will have Clayton Kershaw versus Austin Gomber. You have Miami versus San Francisco, which will be at 2:45 p.m., which will be Jameson Junk versus Hayden Birdsong. Then you'll have Atlanta versus the New York Mets, 6:10 p.m. Grant Holmes versus Griffin Canning. And the Miami-San Francisco game takes place at 2:45. So, let's see. Hello, Jasper. I'm glad that you came and joined me on this broadcast today. Thank you very much. It is greatly appreciated. So, again, my picks for June 26th, I have Detroit defeating the Athletics. I have Toronto defeating Cleveland. I have Minnesota defeating Seattle. I have Philadelphia defeating Houston. I have Kansas City defeating Tampa Bay. I have the Chicago Cubs defeating St. Louis. I have Los Angeles Dodgers defeating Colorado. I have San Francisco defeating Miami. And I have the New York Mets defeating Atlanta. So, one quick overview on who I have winning the games June 24th through 26th of 2025 for the games. For June 24th, I have Baltimore defeating Texas. I have Detroit defeating the Athletics. I have Cleveland defeating Toronto. The New York Mets defeating Atlanta. Cincinnati defeats New York Yankees. Chicago White Sox defeats Arizona. Milwaukee defeats Pittsburgh. Minnesota defeats Seattle. Kansas City defeats Tampa Bay. St. Louis defeats Chicago Cubs. Houston defeats Philadelphia. Los Angeles Dodgers defeats Colorado. Boston loses to the Los Angeles Angels. Washington loses to San Diego. San Francisco defeats Miami. For the games on June 25th, I have Arizona defeats the Chicago White Sox. I have Pittsburgh defeating Milwaukee. I have Boston defeating the Los Angeles Angels. I have Washington defeating San Diego. I have Texas defeating Baltimore. I have the Athletics defeating Detroit. I have Toronto defeating Cleveland. I have Atlanta defeating the New York Mets. I have the New York Yankees winning to Cincinnati. I have Seattle defeating Minnesota. Tampa Bay defeats Kansas City. Chicago Cubs will defeat St. Louis. Philadelphia defeats Houston. Los Angeles Dodgers defeats Colorado. Miami will defeat San Francisco. And again, for June 26th, the games that are scheduled that day, I have Detroit defeating the Athletics. Toronto defeating Cleveland, Seattle losing to Minnesota, Philadelphia winning over Houston, Tampa Bay loses to Kansas City, the Chicago Cubs defeat St. Louis, Los Angeles Dodgers defeats Colorado, Miami loses to San Francisco, and the New York Mets will win over Atlanta. So there you have it. That is my picks for the Major League Baseball games that will be taking place June 24th through 26th of 2025. These games are set for the times to start. Most of them should start on time, but check with your local listings to make sure, because you never know if there's going to be weather delays or anything like that. Thank you again for taking the time to hear the Major League Baseball games, my perspective for the games June 24th through 26th. If you will, please hit the like button. Please hit the subscribe button. Please hit the notification bell so you can be made aware of when I'm doing these live streams, when I have sports action videos, when I have sports education videos, again, when I broadcast live, or when I have breaking news in the sports world. Also, if you wish to subscribe to the channel, it would be very helpful and I would be very grateful. There are two ways to go on YouTube in order to subscribe to the channel. One, you go to www.youtube.com, the slash symbol, the at symbol, SPORTSLOV. You can also go on the YouTube search tab and type in Bob Amin in the search tab, and you'll know it's me because I have Sports Live Media burned into a basketball as my avatar. I'm also on Twitter X. My handle there is at Bob Amin 16. That's the at symbol, BOBAMIN 16. We will have another live stream Saturday of this week, and there will be more details regarding that live stream in the coming days. There will be a notable live stream, a real big one on Saturday, and I will make an announcement regarding that in the coming days. We're also going to continue to do the Major League Baseball live streams 1 to 2 days out of the week. We're looking forward to football season. Football season will be starting soon, and we will be doing college football live streams once college football season. We're also going to continue regular coverage as usual. There will be some sports action videos. Of course, you know there'll be breaking news whenever there happens to be it and stuff. The news, for the most part, at least for the next week or so, may be a little limited. There's not a lot of stuff going on at the moment. However, there will be some sports action videos when we can get those and when we can do those. We will be picking up with high school volleyball starting next month for summer volleyball, and that will be in various locations. There will be some sports week, so stay tuned for that. So anyway, does anybody have any questions, comments? And hello to you, Julian. I'm glad you joined me today. Thank you very much. It is greatly appreciated when you do that. So I do greatly appreciate each and every one of you. And I do thank each and every one of you for joining me on this broadcast today. I will try my best to have another Major League Baseball live stream Thursday. Yeah, probably Thursday of this week. So I'm not sure what we'll do with that, but we will do another Major League Baseball live stream probably Thursday. But the real big live stream that's coming is going to be Saturday, and there will be more information about that coming soon. We may not do the live stream for Major League Baseball on Thursday, but I'll let you know. But I know for sure there will be a live stream on Saturday, and it will be a long and good and fun event. And again, more details will be given about that in the coming days. Thank you again for tuning in today, and I hope each and every one of you have a wonderful day. Bob Amin from Sports Live Media signing out.